All right. Welcome to this live stream with Chris Irwin-Dudek. I'm going to bring him on in just a second. This is going to be a fantastic conversation. Chris wrote this book called Bridging Innovation, which I thought was just a fantastic book. And I asked if he would be on this live stream, and he said yes. So without further ado, let me bring him on. Hello,
Hey.
Chris.
Hey, Dave, how are you?
Fantastic. So I've got a bunch of questions here for you. I want to talk about your book. I thought it was a great book.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll get some live questions from some audience as well. But let's do a brief introduction. So I'm Dave Michaels. I'm with Talking Points, and we're talking here with Chris Irwin-Dudek, Vice President of Marketing Communications at NICE. But we don't want to talk to Chris Irwin-Dudek, VP of Marketing Communications at NICE. We want to talk to Chris Irwin-Dudek, author of Bridging Innovation. So let's start off with the obvious question: bridging innovation. What are we bridging? Even though you made bridges and routers.
Yeah, listen. So first of all, Dave, thanks for the invitation to join you. You know how much respect I've got for you and your analyst colleagues. It's literally why I wanted to put the information out there. I think there's a huge opportunity for analyst relations professionals to have a really strong impact on their businesses. Bringing together significantly intelligent analysts with significantly intelligent executives and putting that mixture together that creates a real magic. And I sometimes think, folks see AR professionals as kind of caregivers, if you will. But I think that they play a much more important role, and I think it's undervalued and undersold. And I really wanted to shed light on the outcomes that effective AR professionals can drive in doing more than just facilitating reports or facilitating conversations. I really fundamentally believe they have an opportunity to change the industries that they're in, and I wanted to chat about that.
Okay, well, I get, and it came across in the book. I get why you wanted to write about analyst relations. I get that, but I really want to hone in on bridging innovation. And so what? How did this title come about? Why didn't you just call it Analyst Relations 101?
For me, AR the magic that is AR is actually really found in what I consider kind of, Dave, the messiness in the middle. It's in the conversations, it's in the content, it's in the connections that are made. So, for example, when we bring in an analyst to meet with a product manager, an ELT member, product marketing, all the various players that kind of participate in this arena. What's really interesting for me is the AR people are often the dumbest people in the room. And I mean that sincerely. We are fortunate enough to work with the world's smartest people. And when you take industry analysts that speak to our customers, speak to consumers, speak with our competitors, right? They bring a viewpoint that businesses they don't have within their ranks. Right? Then you mix that with senior executives, product managers, product marketers. You bring them into the room, and then you begin to have a discussion. And oftentimes, Dave, as you know, those conversations can be contentious and they can be hard. And the result of that, all of that pressure that compounds builds a diamond, right? And we as AR people, we are that bridge in many, many cases between the analyst brain of the world and the executive or the product manager and the product marketer. And we're what bring those two together. And when it works well, it really can, in fact, drive innovation. And that's kind of the thought process behind it.
I really appreciate that. One of my very first, I shouldn't say one of my very first, but a long time ago, one of the vendors I was working with asked me for some assistance with their analyst relations efforts, specifically the Magic Quadrant response, which I know we're going to get to here in a moment. And I was really curious about this, and I went out and I searched everywhere to find books on analyst relations and Magic Quadrants and all this stuff. And it just doesn't exist. There's a few, I found a few things, and this was quite some time ago, but it just doesn't exist. And this isn't a topic that gets taught in school. As I wrote in the post about this interview, I said, little kids, you talk to them in kindergarten, nobody says, I want to grow up and be an analyst relations. And so it's kind of this unknown science. And I love the way that you are putting the spotlight on it. I saw that when I promoted this interview, a number of people that responded were both in analyst relations and, of course, the analyst community that know us. But and it makes sense, it's like, we always have this thing, well, I'm a competitor, I don't want to hear what he has to say, but it's just so silly because what you're trying to do here is really put a spotlight on the profession and some best practices, which I thought was fantastic. So the obvious question that we have to ask now is, who the hell are you? I mean, what makes you an expert in analyst relations, and who gave you a right to write a book about this?
Yes. So first of all, I wouldn't use the word expert, Dave. So let's just take that one off the table from the get-go. What I do hope in writing this book is to provide a viewpoint and a perspective. And it is, we actually talk about this in the book, and happy to drill down with you on it. But it is, in fact, a viewpoint. It's very much how we also look at the analyst community, right? There are a lot of viewpoints, and you consider a lot of different things. So I offer a viewpoint and a perspective. I hope that it's helpful. I hope that it does, in fact, shed a light on what we do and why it's important to the businesses that we support. But it really is about creating an amplification for the analyst community, for the AR community, and the work that we collectively produce.
Well, I appreciate you taking a bow there, but I was actually asking you to kind of share your credentials. I mean, you've been in this industry for a little while. Do you want to explain a little bit about?
I have, and sure, happy to share a little bit of that with you. So for me, analyst relations is the job of a lifetime. And I mean that sincerely. Those that know me well know how much I love the work that is AR. Some folks aspire to be a CEO. Some folks want to be a physician. Some folks want to be an engineer. This is the job that I wanted for a very long time. So I've been fortunate enough to be in analyst relations now for 20 plus years. Been in the tech arena for a little over 30 years. I'm aging myself a little bit. But I've actually deliberately wanted to stay in the analyst relations arena, turned down opportunities in order to continue to support this field because I believe in it. So over my career, I've worked with all of the major players, to the boutiques, to the independents, to the tier twos, North America, global, been really fortunate enough to work with a lot of amazing people over my career. Fantastic.
And different types of companies as well. And so you brought in some different perspectives around there. The book you wrote has 19 chapters. I got to say, 20 would have been a nice round number. I was going to suggest to you maybe another chapter on, or a chapter on swag. You should have written a chapter. Then you would have had a nice even 20. And I think that would have been nicer. But anyway, let's talk about some of these chapters. I want to talk to you starting off with chapter 4, ensuring you're measuring the right things in analyst relations. Do you use a tape measure or a scale when you measure things? Or
it's a little bit of both. So a lot of folks, I think, especially senior executives, really focused on the outcomes of the all-knowing, all-visual reports that are out there, and they matter. They matter a lot. They matter a lot to the businesses. They matter a lot to the industries. But we look at a number of different things in terms of how we manage those metrics. So we look at things like number of engagements, number of in-person touches, sentiment, those kinds of things, things beyond a major rating report. And that's the really kind of purpose or focus of that chapter is, are you measuring what matters to you, right? If for your organization, all you care about is the outcome of the report, then that's a business decision. I think it's a poor decision, to be quite frank with you, Dave, because I think there's many other outcomes that can benefit your organization. Look at when you look at your analyst community, are they honest with you, right? Why are we not managing that, right? We want analysts that are willing to come to the table and have an honest, ethical conversation with us in order to help us make our products and services better for the folks that we're serving. And I think that that's important. And if you can get the relationship to a place where you've got an open dialogue, there's a huge impact on the business beyond just strictly a placement in a report. So we look at a number of different factors, and I think the takeaway there is really just calling light to, do you know what you want? Do you know what you're really working towards in terms of that desired outcome, and making sure that whatever you're measuring is actually in fact supporting what you're trying to accomplish with your business.
Very, very good. We got one comment from a viewer. I haven't mentioned your book is an ebook available from Amazon on the Kindle. But apparently it's not available outside the U.S. Is that intentional?
It's actually no. It actually is available globally now.
Okay, so we'll have to get back to Chris here, because he says he couldn't buy it.
Yeah, and let them know. We'll make sure that we connect with them.
Okay. All right. So let's jump to chapter. Okay, actually, we're going to jump to a couple of chapters here. You got chapter 7 called all about major reports. You've got chapter 8, a whole chapter dedicated to the Magic Quadrant, Gartner Magic Quadrant, and then you got chapter 9 about vendor RFIs. This is all one. This is just one chapter. Why don't you just call this chapter 7? What's going on here?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different things, right? We can't put a book out around AR without talking about the Magic Quadrant. That would be like us not talking about AI in any conversation these days. But when we look at major rating reports, right? These are the typically the ranking reports, those reports that come out with an image. Those are the trophy reports for organizations. And so I spend a little bit of time in the book talking about understanding, what those reports are, how each one of them kind of has a different importance, a different approach. Each of those firms, looks at things a little bit differently. And, Dave, just to kind of simplify it, when I look at, at buyers that are trying to make a buy decision and they're investing significant money in their businesses, right? One report, helps, create a short list for a particular company that's looking at various vendors. I encourage folks to look across those multiple rating reports, because I think that's where the real tell is, right? When you have different approaches, some organizations put more emphasis on global capabilities. Some organizations, and by organizations, I mean analyst firms,
right? Yep.
They look at which size of company that you serve, or they look at things like your road. Some look more heavily at roadmap, and what that longevity looks like, and those kinds of things. And so, depending on what your need as a business is, you look at various different reports. So I think what's really important for a buyer is to really look across the entire plane at the various major rating reports, because I think at some level, 1 + 1 + 1 does in fact equal 3. And I think it's important for folks to look holistically across all those reports and understand, as from an AR practitioner perspective, what each of those reports brings to the table, so that in fact, you're not responding to an RFI for each of those reports in the same kind of repetitive way. Each one has its own nuance.
So do you think, as an AR professional, that you can really influence these big reports, or is it, if you come out well in an analyst report like that, isn't it just a function that you had a great product, and if you come out poorly in one of the reports like that, don't you just go back to your leadership team and say, well, it's not our fault in AR, we have some deficiencies in our product? I mean, how much of this is really up to AR to affect?
Yeah, so I think, Dave, there's always a lot of discussion around influence. And so I want to just slightly tweak that a little bit to talk about informative. And so, for example, one of the roles that AR plays, and we work very closely with product marketing and product management, which is very typical across most organizations. But, it's really important to ensure you're answering the question, right? And so in order to get an effective rating and to get the result that you want, you have to have a good product, right? That's just baseline, right? You don't have a product, you're not in the game, right? There's just doesn't get any more simplistic than that. The nuance that we're talking about here is, right, explaining and helping an analyst understand your product and your service in a very succinct and clear way. That's where AR plays a role, right? We
Yes.
know the nuance that when, I come back to an example that I often think about. There's a particular analyst in a previous role that every time someone in the room would use the word omni-channel, this analyst would get red and really get frustrated. And so we really had to make a conscious effort in our written responses and in our conversations not to use omni-channel. Right. There's other ways to describe what we want. And that's the nuance of how we influence it, is understanding that when we talk to Dave Michaels, he uses this particular word. And when we work with another particular analyst, well, they use that particular word. And when you have a strong relationship with the analyst that you work with, you understand we're all human, right? Some people prefer, apples. Some people prefer oranges. You don't give those people the opposite and think they're going to enjoy them. And so
bugaboo navigation. Yeah, bugaboo navigation.
Exactly. It really is about navigation. That's a very good way.
All right, chapter 13, debunking the myth of pay to play. I'm not sure you've debunked it completely, but there is a lot of talk about pay to play, and so why don't you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this is where I get, those that have followed me on LinkedIn and see anything that I put out there, I get really wound up here. It's insulting to me. It's insulting to the professionals that we work with. And I will tell you that my experience is that the moment you put yourself in a situation where there's even an implied pay to play, you're done with an analyst. We don't have to worry about the industry or our competitors or our customers or anything like that. Analysts have no tolerance for that approach. And I think some people would be surprised to hear that, quite frankly. But it's true. I look at it in the following way. It's a really unique analogy in that for me, it's like Little League. Right, you have to pay your entry fee in order to play in the Little League tournament. It doesn't make you the winner of the Little League World Series, right? You've got to show up, you've got to do the work, you've got to play hard, and you've got to win the game, right? But analysts are not in what they do for free. None of us are, right? I mean, they've got firms to run, bills to pay, salaries to pay, and so forth and so on. So, talking out of both sides of my mouth, Dave, there is a requirement to invest in an organization. And what I mean by that is most organizations offer a syndicated research program, right? They sell their reports, their baseline stuff. That's what keeps the lights on, right? And all of us, every vendor supports that kind of syndicated research. And when you don't buy that research, for me, it says that the research doesn't matter, right? I want you to give me a really good rating in this report. I want you to evaluate us with all of the best view of our business. But your outputs are not worth us purchasing. So for me, that baseline contract is really important. Beyond that is where it gets kind of tricky, if you will. And it's an area that I don't think analysts are comfortable in, and neither am I as an AR professional.
So that's an interesting topic. You're the pay to play is, the idea of the concept of bribing a particular analyst, which
the more you
not
spend,
going to
the
do
better
that.
your placement.
But the question is, not everybody has budget to subscribe to a lot of these services. A lot of these services are very expensive. You addressed this in the book. You talked about getting the budget, which is one section, but you also talked about doing it without a budget. Or let's touch on that.
So look, most firms, not most firms, I will tell you, every firm that I've worked with over my career, not a single one of them do you have to purchase anything to be evaluated in their research, right? If you've got a quality product and you've got a quality service, you will get the attention of the analyst. That's just plain and simple. So you don't, in fact, you're not required to make that investment. What I talked about before is just my belief, and you've got to support the analysts that are writing about a particular subject in order to make sure that they continue to write about that subject, whether it's about our firm or another firm or so forth and so on. But you in fact don't have to have that, right? I think there are things you can do as an AR practitioner to keep analysts informed, whether it's providing ongoing briefings, or it's ensuring that they understand where your business is at any moment in time. And we all have email, Dave. It doesn't forbid me from sending you a case study that I think is interesting, simply because we don't have a contractual relationship, right? So unless you put me on a do not send list of some kind, right? There are things I can do as an AR practitioner to
dialogue, maintaining that dialogue, maintaining that conversation.
Yeah. And the more you're informed, right, as an analyst, right, the more likely you are to cover the topic or cover the actual organization, right? If you have that information, you're better informed. If we've not provided you that information, you have no opportunity to know about what our business is doing. And that there's not a financial dollar amount attached to that, or a financial need attached to that, in order to advance that information with you.
So what I found so interesting about your book is, I'm someone who works with AR professionals all the time. So I'm like, what am I going to learn? I already know everything. There's nothing that Chris is going to teach me. But actually, you refer to it as the magic and stuff like that. There's so much stuff that, of course, from the outside, I don't see. And I found a lot of it so interesting. I thought this chapter 15, managing difficult conversations, and I always want to say accounts receivable, but in Analyst Relations, difficult conversations. What is it? We don't have your T-shirt size. And I mean, what do you? Give me an idea of what you're talking about here.
Listen, everyone thinks things are smooth sailing. They're not, and that's just the reality of it. This is analyst's job, in my opinion, are to understand the needs of the market and to drive organizations to meet and exceed those expectations, right? And when an analyst is in the room with a team, and they fundamentally believe that an organization is best positioned if they were to make a particular acquisition, or they believe that with these 3 functionalities in their product, it will take it to the next level, and that viewpoint doesn't necessarily align. It can get contentious, Dave, and good and well, based on your experience, that there are times where there are very difficult conversations that happen in a room, right? We believe that our strategy is this is where the market is going, and an analyst believes that the market is going this direction, and we get, on the receiving end of that evaluation, that organization gets hindered by the disconnect between those two strategies. And sometimes, an AR person plays a little bit of a matchmaker and counselor to bring those two ideas together. And so for me, managing those conversations is a real opportunity to create some magic. A lot of folks, a seller, for example, wants to close a multi-million-dollar deal. When an AR practitioner gets an analyst in the room and an executive in the room, and the two of you go off into proverbial la la land and begin talking in a technical way, and both of your eyes light up, and next thing you know, we're walking out of the room with an enhanced product or enhanced service. And that is often the result of some of these difficult conversations. And if you're willing to sit in the mud a little bit, the end result of that for me is really special.
Fantastic. My favorite chapter in your book, obviously, is chapter 18, The Power of Independent Analysts. As an independent analyst, I'm always, getting questions about the big analysts, right? We already talked, you had 3 chapters on the big analyst reports and stuff like that. But this is the first book I've seen that actually talks about the independent analyst. So I think that was fantastic. You want to share any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we, those that are in the kind of AR world, all have their own kind of importance. Who's important to the business kind of thing. We fundamentally believe, I fundamentally believe, and I say it often, that there's always room at the table, and if there's not room enough at the table, you make a bigger table. That is fundamentally how I think AR should be run. Everyone has a place, right? The Gartners, the Forresters, the IDCs of the world, everyone knows their magic quadrants, their waves, and their marketscapes, right? Huge impact in the market. Hats off to the folks that do the work and put in the effort there. However, there is also another pool of folks, which are these independent analysts, that I have a particular love for. Why is that? It's for a few reasons. They are insanely agile, right? So when AI takes off, right, we've been talking about AI for years, but then it takes off out of nowhere. Those independent analysts have the freedom and the ability to drive that conversation in the market in a whole new way. And they don't need to get approval on a research calendar. They don't have to put out a whole series of methodologies in order to do that. They're in market within days, right? Really kind of pushing the conversation. A good example, Dave, is when COVID broke out, right? COVID broke out. Everyone's trying to figure out how to pivot with their employees. A lot of organizations were on premise, were considering moving to the cloud. Within a matter of hours, right, we were able to rally a number of industry analysts to come together and be the center of excellence for the next steps to take, right? That's from contracting with them to setting up a webinar to putting that information out there when our customers most needed it. And without those independent analysts, we likely would not have been able to move with that kind of speed. And that is one thing that I share a passion for when it comes to these independents. And it's a value that I think is unique to that particular community, and one that I think folks ought to, quite frankly, exploit.
All right. Well, your book available on Amazon Kindle ebook. A fantastic book, and there's just not a lot of books like this, folks. I've looked and searched, read the few that are there, and there's just not many like this. I think it's a valuable contribution to our profession. And I recommend it for both analysts and for analyst relations professionals. So, Chris, we've gone about a half hour here. Is there anything that you wanted to share that I didn't ask about, or are we covered?
Yeah, listen, the only other thing is I just want to say is it's truly an honor. It's a career honor for me. I did, when I went through this process, I recognized that I'm incredibly fortunate that we always get to sit on the forefront of technology. Right, we're the ones with the latest product and the latest service, and really trying to push that forward. And to I wasn't joking when I said, as AR practitioners, we're 9 times out of the 10, we're the dumbest people in the room, right? We are working with such intelligent people, and we get up every day, and that's our job. It's why this job is so important to me, because we're constantly learning and we're constantly evolving, and that's the collaboration between working with the senior leaders within your own organization and tapping into this community of just rich, intelligent people. So thanks for having me, and I appreciate it, Dave.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you so much. This video will be available for a replay on both LinkedIn and YouTube. And Chris, good luck with the book, and thank you for writing it. And thanks for watching.
Thanks, everybody.